Okay, so this is, as we mentioned, part 2 of a series of webinars. The first one we did was on rental real estate. If you missed that one, that was recorded, as is this one, and you can watch them all on our website. And I'm sure Eve and LACMA will also broadcast the recorded webinars on their social media platforms as well. So I'm Ara Ogorian. I'm with ACAP Advisors and Accountants. I am the founder of ACAP Advisors and Accountants. This is actually our 10th year in business. We're celebrating 10-year anniversary. I'm both a certified financial planner and I'm also a CPA. Our focus is primarily on wealth management and also tax services. So here, before we begin, just a quick housekeeping item. This webinar is being recorded, so if you missed this webinar or if you can't watch it all the way through, we are going to have it available after the fact, and it's going to be on our website. Also, if you have questions, please submit your questions online during the webinar. We will get to all of the questions at the end, and if you have questions afterwards, feel free to contact us or submit a question on our YouTube page where this webinar will be posted, and we will get to your questions there as well. Here is a roadmap of what we're going to cover today. So it's a pretty meaty subject, and it really is applicable to a lot of people in the Southern California region who are in LA County or in City of Los Angeles. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is the City of LA business tax. And then we're going to go over who is responsible for the tax and how is it calculated. And then we will go over when is the tax due, and if there are any exemptions for individuals that are subject to the tax. And then most importantly, we're going to talk about some strategies to lower the tax. And lastly, we're going to conclude by discussing the LA City business tax versus the LA County unsecured property tax, which a lot of business owners have a confusion over. So we will hopefully demystify some of those confusing factors and help you understand the differences between those two types of taxing authorities and entities in general. So if you conduct any business in the City of Los Angeles, or if you have any customers or clients in the City of LA, but your business is outside the City of LA, you must file what is known as a business tax registration certificate, fancy name for a business license. And you have to do it every year, regardless of whether or not you generated any revenues. So like I said, this is just another thing as a business license, but the difference is that this license fee changes every year based on how much money you make. So if you are engaged in a business in the City of LA and you physically, and we'll talk about physically and what's defined by that later on, perform work in the city for 7 days or more throughout the year, which is a very low bar, then you have to get that business license. Even if you don't make any money or you make very little money, your tax liability is zero, you still have to apply for the license to get that exemption, and we'll talk about that more later as well. Last point is, it's a gross receipts tax, and I want to define what that means by gross receipts. So let's assume that you have a business that generates $1 million of revenue in a year, but your net profit is $50,000 or $10,000. So you have a lot of expenses, but your tax base is based on that $1 million of revenue that you make a year. So as you can see, you're really not benefiting from any of those expenses that you might have that are legitimate business expenses, because your tax base to how they calculate that tax is based on that gross amount, that top line $1 million of income that you get. In case you're wondering where is or what is considered the City of LA, here's a quick map, or here's a map of the City of LA. And as you can see, it's pretty vast, and it excludes also, as you can see, certain pockets of cities, notably Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, to name a few. And you might assume that if your business is in one of those areas, if you operate in Santa Monica or if you're in Beverly Hills, that you don't have to pay the LA City business tax. And that might be true, but that really depends on a number of factors, which we'll go over later when we're talking about strategies to minimize your tax. Also, if you operate only in the City of Santa Monica or only in the City of Beverly Hills or some of those cities that are outside the City of LA boundaries, then that city itself may have a business license requirement. So you may want to check with that city's finance department to find out whether or not your business is required to register and get a business license and pay any type of fees associated with it. So who owes this LA City business tax? If you are a sole proprietor, an LLC, a corporation, or if you own some rental properties, specifically 4 units or more, including single family. If you're a freelancer or a 1099 contractor, then you owe LA City business tax, or you have to file for an LA City business license. Now, in case you're still wondering whether or not after you get an LA City business license, here are some more examples. Let's say that you work at home and you're writing a book and you made a few $100s, or if you are a freelance copywriter or a handyman, whatever. These are just some examples of, home-based businesses that you might do. If you are in the city of LA, you have to get a business license. And even if you make just $100 or $200 a year, you would still have to get it. And there's a great example, I think it's in the LA Business Journal, that talks about a woman that earned, I think, $200 or $300 in 1099 income working from home. And she got a nasty letter from the city of LA saying that she owed a ton of money based on what the city of LA thought that she earned of 1099 income. So it's better to file your business license, get that out of the way, and avoid that nasty letter that you're going to get from the city of LA. Even if you're in the right, it's still important to be proactive about it. So let's say you live and work in the city of LA, but you want to know whether or not the business license applies to you. Here are some examples of when it would not apply to you. So if you have dividend or interest income, if you are a W-2 employee, you live in the city of LA and you work for a company, you have W-2 income, you would not have to get a business license. If you have income from passive investments, this is a little bit tricky because it depends on what type of passive investments and how much you have of it. As you can see in the next bullet point, if you have rental income from 3 or less rental properties, you do not have to get an LA City business license. You don't owe the tax. But the good news is that if you have multiple rental properties, you can get one business license for that overall portfolio of properties that you manage. Again, just a reminder, if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them in a Q&A section, and we'll get to all of them at the end of the presentation or the end of the webinar. Let's go over how the tax is actually calculated. I mentioned that it's a gross receipts tax. That means that it's the top line that's used to determine your tax base. And it's based on the type of business you have, and it varies. The tax rate varies based on that type of business. And you'll see there's a range of $1 and a penny to, and that's actually a misprint. It should be $4.50, not 4 1/4. So it can range from $1 to $4.50 per $1,000 of revenues. And the type of businesses, there's a whole list of them on the City of LA Department of Finance website. But just to give you an example, on the low end would be like a child care center. They would be charged or assessed approximately $1 for every $1,000 of revenue they had. But if you're a professional, such as a CPA or a doctor or anyone in a professional realm, you would be taxed at that higher rate of $4.50 per $1,000. Now, what if you're in the cannabis industry? Now, I'm not an expert in the cannabis industry, but I did want to include this in there in case there are some individuals who are in the cannabis industry. Well, if you are, the tax rate is significantly higher. As you saw on the previous slide, the maximum rate was $4.50 for a professional. You'll see the minimum here is $10. And if you are in the adult use cannabis sales, anything related to adult use of recreational cannabis, your tax rate is $100 for every $1,000 you make. That is an astronomical difference versus other types of business entities working in the city of LA. So I guess if you are in that industry, it would probably behoove you to be outside the city of LA, assuming that that other city that you're in also does not have these astronomical tax rates that they charge. So when is the tax due? It's due every January 1st and it's based on the prior year's income, fiscal year's income. I'm sorry, not fiscal year, calendar year income. And it is delinquent on March 1st. So essentially you have to pay it by February 28th of every year. And you have to renew it. You must renew it every year, even if you are exempt. This is so important because some people assume that, oh, my income is not high enough, therefore I'm exempt, I don't have to renew. But that is not the case. If you do not annually renew your license, you are going to get dinged and penalized by the city of LA. So please remember to renew. Also, if your liability is greater than $50,000, you must file that electronically. And you kind of wonder maybe what company would owe more than $50,000 of LA City business tax. Think of maybe a Ferrari dealership or a high-end media company. They're going to be making millions and millions of dollars a year. They're going to be taxed out that gross receipts tax, the top line revenue that they have to pay tax on. So the question may be, what are some exemptions associated with it? So if you are a business that earns less than $100,000 a year, again, let's say if you do some consulting business on the side and you earn $75,000 or $50,000 or $40,000 a year, the tax does not apply to you, but you have to get the license to be able to earn the exemption. And if you don't get that license, then you're going to fall into that category of that woman I gave an example of earlier that earned a measly amount of a few $100s, but got this huge tax bill from the city because the city assumes that you earn a certain amount based on the industry that you're in. Also, because we're in LA and we're in the entertainment capital of the world, City of LA tries to grant exemptions, a higher exemption for people who are in the entertainment business. So in this case, if you're a creative artist and you earn $300,000 of income or less, actually less than $300,000, you also are exempt. But again, you have to file for the license. I'm not sure why this exemption exists, but there's also a small family daycare exemption, where if you have 8 or fewer kids under the age of 10, then you're also exempt from that, as are nonprofit organizations, which makes sense. But for all of the above, you have to get to get the exemption, you have to register every year for that license. So come January, February, you go out and fill out that application online. Even if you don't get the postcard for the reminder, you should put it on your calendar to update it and apply for it every year, every January. There used to be this exemption for companies who are in the first 2 years of their business that they would not have to pay tax, but that expired in 2018. So that no longer applies as an exemption, because we get that question every so often as well. Okay, so what are some strategies to lower the tax? Now, if you conduct business both in and outside the city of LA, those gross receipts are not excluded, but they are appropriated. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you you live in Santa Monica, but you do business in the city of LA, or you live in the city of LA, but you do some business in the city of Santa Monica. That income that's outside of city of LA is not excluded, it's appropriated. So therefore, it would have behooved you to maintain really detailed records, because the income that's earned outside the city of LA will get an appropriation amount, and it's a percentage based on the type of work that you're doing, where you're doing it. So there's a whole laundry list on the City of LA's website that talks about how that appropriation works. So really, really important to keep track of it. You can either do it through a CRM system, a client relationship management system, through Excel, maybe within that Excel code things through zip codes, but identify a way of tracking what a portion of that income is coming from outside the city of LA. And like I said, it depends on a number of factors that the city of LA has on their website, and they have percentages. Now, one other thing you can also do is, you can move outside the city of LA, but if you do that, make sure you don't take the home office deduction. Like if you move your business outside the city of LA saying, well, I live in the city of LA, but I'm going to move my business office to Burbank or Glendale because there's no city tax within those cities. But if you take a home office deduction on your tax return, that's going to come back to bite you later, because they're going to say, hey, even though your office address is in Glendale or Burbank or Calabasas where there's no city tax, you're really conducting business in the city of LA, and you're going to be dinged for that. And I'll circle back later on how they kind of catch people doing that later on. So let's assume you do get caught and you do not apply for that license. Well, there are penalties and there are interest. It's not penalties or, it's penalties and interest. So the penalty is 5% of the principal amount per month. So the first month will be 5%, then 10, 15, 20, and the fifth month it jumps up to 40%. Now the website doesn't say what happens after the sixth month, but I can just imagine that the fees or the penalties will just continue to escalate. The interest rate, in addition, is also 0.5% per month, and that's as of 2019, and that changes every year. Also, the city of LA can go back 8 years to collect unpaid taxes, so do not ignore. Now, this last bullet point is super important. There was an assembly bill called AB63 that allows the franchise tax board to share information about your business with the city of LA. So if you file a business tax return, or if you file a tax return and you have business income, and on your address on your tax return is in the city of LA, and you did not file a business license, well, you're going to get a nasty letter from the city of LA saying you owe tax on what they think you made. And believe me, their assumption is going to be much higher than what you may actually made. And you're going to owe tax on that amount unless you can prove otherwise that you did not actually make that much money. So do not ignore, file your LA City business license and do it on time. So this question comes up often: City of LA versus LA County. Now, City of LA is very different than LA County. LA County has an unsecured property tax, whereas the City of LA has a gross receipts tax. And the LA County is significantly larger than City of LA, and City of LA is within LA County. And LA County would be examples of, Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, I think Calabasas also LA County. So you have a very vast area of LA County that applies to this. So the LA County has this thing called the unsecured property tax, also known as a 571L. And if you operate in that city, you're gonna be required to file for this unsecured property tax and pay it, which I'll describe in a minute. Also, if you have businesses operating in the unincorporated cities of LA County, you must also obtain a business license from them. And here's a list of some of those businesses that require an LA City or LA County business license. Let's talk about what this unsecured property tax is. Essentially, it's an ad valorem tax or a value-added tax on personal property. And it's due January 1st and August. It's owed on January 1st and due on August 31st of every year. And luckily, if you have a business with property of less than $100,000, then you don't owe that tax unless you get a statement from the county assessor saying that they want you to itemize all your property and you may owe a tax on that. So you may be wondering, what is actually that tax based on? Well, it's a pretty erroneous tax if you ask me, because it includes things like your computer, your desks, your chairs, your telephone, your physical telephone systems, your Post-it notes, your pens and paper. All those things, if they add up to more than $100,000, you owe LA County unsecured property tax. And this is separate from property tax on real estate. So if you own that real estate, you're going to pay property tax on real estate because it's secured. In this case, it's unsecured. So very important to know the difference between the two. So when you operate a business, every government agency will come knocking on your door with their hand out, asking for money some way or the other. Now, we just only covered City of LA and the County of LA. But don't forget, there's also the state of California and the granddaddy of them all, the IRS. So it's very important to understand what your local and state tax responsibilities are and to make sure that you're in compliance with them. Otherwise, you're going to get a nasty letter with penalties and interest due on those unpaid taxes. If you want to learn more information about that, you can go to either one of these websites and learn about their frequently asked questions about what is based on the taxation and how you can find out more about that tax base and tax factors. So a little bit about ACAP. We are a full-service tax and financial advisory firm. We help navigate our clients with these complexities of the tax nuances, both at the state, local level, and also at the county level. We do tax services for individuals, corporations, partnerships. As a full-service firm, we also do the payroll, bookkeeping, and business management for our clients. In addition, we're also a comprehensive wealth management firm for individuals and companies. For companies, we help set up and manage 401k plans, profit-sharing plans, and pension plans for businesses. At this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. So if you've got questions, please feel free to post them on there. And I see we've already got a few questions, so I'll go ahead and read through them. Let me see. First one is, what if I have multiple businesses? Do I need a license for each one? Yes, if you have, that depends actually. If you have multiple businesses in general, you do need a license for each one, especially if they are in different types of industries. And the reason it would actually benefit you, so let's say you have a childcare business and you have a law firm. Well, you don't want to just lump them all in one business, because the childcare business has a lower tax base versus a law firm, which will have a much higher tax base. So you do need to get separate business licenses, but in that case, it will benefit you from separating them out. Okay, next question is, I own and rent out 2 single-family homes in LA. Do I need a business license? So because the 2 single-family homes is below the 4 limit, actually at 4 you have to get it, up to 3 you do not have to get a business license. You are exempt from getting the business license. So not only do you not have to register, but you don't have to get a business license if you operate 2 single-family homes or 2 condos. But if you own a quadplex or an apartment building with 5 or more units, you need a business license. Okay, the next question is, I live in the city of LA, but I own rental properties outside of the city. Why do I need a business license if my business is outside of LA? That is a great question, and that actually comes up quite frequently, and it ties back in with the sharing of information with the Franchise Tax Board. So let's continue with that example. Let's assume that you you live in the city of LA and you own a bunch of rental properties in Arizona, Colorado, in the Inland Empire, all outside the city of LA. And your question is, why do I have to pay LA city business tax? Those businesses are outside of LA. But if you, earlier I said it depends on where you physically perform the activities. If you are managing those properties from your home in the city of LA, and you are communicating with vendors, if you are collecting rent checks to your home, if you are doing anything within your home, especially if you're taking the home office deduction, bam, that's it. You owe LA city business tax. Now, luckily, that income that's earned outside is appropriated, so you can keep detailed records of what you have, but it doesn't exempt you from having to get the business license. So very important distinction there. Okay, next question is, if I have a business in LA, do I also have to worry about the county unsecured property tax too? Yes, you do. So let's assume that you have a business in LA, your clients are also in LA, but you have several computers, you have several pieces of machinery and equipment. You also have to get you also have to pay unsecured property tax to LA County. So unfortunately, you're going to be double taxed. You owe tax on LA County, you owe tax to the city of LA, and don't forget that you probably paid sales tax, or you should have paid sales tax on those items that you bought in your business. This concludes, I don't think there are any other questions that I see. I think we had answered all the questions. So this concludes our presentation. If you do have questions or you missed the entire presentation, this will be recorded and put on our website. So feel free to go to our website or email us if you have any questions. We're happy to answer them. And don't forget about our hotline you can contact.